with a delusion about your efforts to manage. The book goes on to say, is it not evident to all the rest of the people in my life, these are the things that I want, and do not my actions make these people wish to retaliate? Column 1 and 2, snatching all they can get out of the show. Am I not, even at my very best, a producer of confusion rather than harmony? Talks about I'm self-centered. Turn to page 62 if you have your book, and this ties into inventory. Selfishness, self-centered. That we think is the root of all of our troubles. Now, I want you to think of it this way. You got the word driven. I'm going to show you how you can do an inventory, and it's a full circle. Imagine this is the fourth column first. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, I step on the toes of my fellows, column 1. They retaliate, column 2. Sometimes they hurt me, column 3. See me without provocation. But I can always find, it says I invariably means always, by the way. I will invariably find that at some time in the past I have made a decision based on self, column 3, which later placed me in a position to be hurt. It's a full circle. So all my troubles are of my own making. I reap what I sow. I go through life being driven into self-will by fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity. I make this decision. I pursue this course. At some point in time, they become very aware that I'm trying to arrange them to suit my needs, and they retaliate. So now I'm hurt. I feel hurt, threatened, or interfered, and then I blame them. And it's just a full circle. I started out, and I'm left over on the other side. So all my troubles are of my own making. That's that sentence I told you about. We went around the room, and you all made a list of what your top 10 troubles are. Please get an awareness that they're of your own making. And that's good news. That's real good news. These troubles arise out of me, and I am an extreme example of self-will run riot, though I don't think so. That's the other reason I gave you the exercise. Go ask some people who are close to you. How am I showing up to you? How do I show up? If you're in delusion, you don't know you're in delusion. It's nice if you have some people around you care enough about you to tell you that. See? Remember Joe told you that example? I'm talking to him, and he's been out in Santa Monica like a year or two, and I got to do this fifth step with Don. I said, excuse me a minute. But he lives about 2,000 miles away. You need to find somebody in California to read that inventory to and to get accountable to. Oh my God, I wouldn't have thought of that. You follow me? And then, of course, the line I've talked about, it says, above everything, I must be rid of this selfishness. It's going to be your third and fourth column. I must, or it will kill me. It will kill us. I must, or it will kill us. This is our problem. Every single person in this room who is having any kind of problem whatsoever, it is rooted in your selfishness. It is rooted in your selfishness. And that includes any form of emotional pain, even that surrounding death. Death of loved ones. Our name is not in the next sentence. God makes that possible. See, if you don't come to the third step, understanding this issue of where God fits in it, why would you do the rest of the work? You've got to understand this. The very thing that you're up against right here, right now, today. I don't give a shit about last year or night. I'm talking about the stuff you're up against today that has you miserable, that has you fear-based, that has you afraid, that has you limiting yourself. That stuff, see? Only God can remove that stuff. The stuff that has you in depression, anxiety, sense of separation, dependence, attachments. That's the stuff that I'm talking about. Current stuff today. And it goes on and says, and go into your own experience, there seems no way to entirely get rid of self. We could spend a weekend on what they mean by entirely getting rid of self without God's aid. Trust me, if self-will could eliminate self-will, we'd all be doing a lot better. It says you and I have moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we can't live up to them no matter how much we try. Here's why. My moral and philosophical convictions. Let's take one. This manner of living demands rigorous honesty. So I'm going to be honest in all my relationships with people, right? I think we probably, if you've been around AA, I think that's probably a moral, philosophical conviction you have. Is that right? Well, how you doing with that? And we all had a lot of struggles. And you know why? Because if I'm rigorously honest with others, that is not going... I'm going to share some stuff and probably, I think, not get some things I think I need that's rooted in my selfishness. That's why your moral and philosophical convictions galore, that in your selfishness will not fit in the same state of consciousness. So you get conflicted all of the time. You get conflicted and you violate your conscience, right? I want to be a good husband, I want to be a good wife or a good member of AA, or, you know, I want to do this, I want to do that, give my employer a fair day's work, and you can't do it and you're conflicted, you violate your conscience. And the extent to which you do that is the extent to which you begin to suffer from these things, anxiety and fears. See, I had to see the truth of that. I have all this moral and philosophical. Joe and I have talked about that. You know, I'm up against this stuff, right? All this work, all this stuff is still going on. Where's this stuff coming from, right? I got moral and philosophical convictions galore, and I can't live up to them, right? And I can't reduce this by wishing or trying on my own power. Boy, we do a lot of that, right? I'm going to pray it away. You know, that's like praying for the person you're resentful at. Who should be getting your prayers, you or them? Resentment's the number one offender. I don't think they have a problem. I don't think they need your prayer. I think you need your prayer. See? I'm going to pray for them. They're just fine. You're the problem. Your trouble's of your own making. Write some inventory, and you'll find out what I mean. They're okay. See? So, you know, you get done with this, and it ends. It says, I had to have God's help. Do you? Right here, right now, today, you know? So, this is how I'm going to get God's help. A lot of people don't understand this. See, first thought, I gotta have God's help. Okay. So now, this is how. Pretty important, don't you think? If you have to have it, and how? You're going to quit playing God. What do you mean? That great question, right? What do you mean? I mean you're going to quit playing God. Well, could you be a little more specific? Yeah, for example, you're just going to allow all the people in your life just to be who they are. And you're going to love them exactly as they are, and nothing in them needs to change. Nothing. Or you change. Wow. And you're going to quit bitching about your boss, and you're going to quit playing God. It's not your business how long people are supposed to live and die and who gets sober and who not. You're going to quit playing God. Not your business about here. Wow. Pretty radical stuff, right? You know. But the only way you're going to get God's help is to quit playing God. See, why would God assist you if you think you're God? See? My experience is God comes into empty vessels, not full ones. See? So how do you empty the vessel out? Steps 4 through 9. You empty the vessel out. So I got to quit playing God. Okay? My standard response probably is so many questions anymore. I don't know. I don't know. You know why? I'm not God. There's such a huge picture. Isn't anybody in this room that is even remotely has any idea about how God works? And if you think you do, come talk to me. The picture is huge. So huge. I think several years ago, I think Joe might have started doing some work with Larry. And I think that's kind of And as a result, you're all sitting here, so it's their true fault, right? But I mean, the point that I'm trying to make in it is nobody in this room has any idea how God works. And the picture is so big and so vast, that it's beyond our comprehension. So I'm going to quit playing God. Why? Because me playing God does not work. Me playing God does not work. So that's that question we've thrown out to you several times. How's it working? Look at your life right now, your life, nobody else's. How's it working, you playing God? How is that working for you? Okay. That's the acid test. Is it working for you? It says it doesn't work. My experience is it doesn't work, me playing God. Now we got that decision that we're going to make. We're going to say that prayer. Now we're going to get some instructions on inventory. I want to talk about some of those for a little bit. I like writing inventory. And the reason is because I understand what's going to happen to me as a result of that. I want to make this statement. I think it's very important. Do not let other people read your big book for you. Do not let your sponsor read your big book for you. Don't let anyone read your big book for you. You need to have an idea of what your big book says, and you need to read your big book. And that's the place to go when in doubt, or if you're looking for instructions. Okay? So we get done with this third step, and we say this prayer, which is an affirmation of our decision. And it talks about next we're going to launch out on a vigorous action, course of vigorous action, which is going to be a house cleaning, which many of us have never attempted. And prior to that, the big book says that you're going to experience the great reality of this power that you need deep down within yourself, but that you're blocked. So think of the inventory as this. We're going to do steps 4 through 9 to face and be rid of that which has me blocked from the power that I so desperately need in my life. To not drink and to have a life of some peace, some dignity, some integrity. Am I willing to do that? Face and be rid of that which has me blocked from that which resides within as well as without. It says, though my third step decision, I'm on page 64, was vital and crucial. It, by the way, anytime the big book uses the word it, please know what it means. So it, in this case, is my third step decision. That decision will have little permanent effect, highlight those two words, unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and to be rid of the things in myself which have been blocking me from God, from knowing God. I didn't say believing in God. I said knowing God. Knowing God. Okay? My God, what a difference. What a difference that is between believing in God and knowing God. And then those of you who think liquor is your problem, the next sentence, if your book says the same thing, mine is going to be problematic for you because your liquor is but a symptom. Your drugs is but a symptom. Whatever your first step is but a symptom. So we're going to get down to causes, second column, and conditions, third column. We're going to start upon a personal inventory. This is going to be fact-finding, fact-facing, effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade. This self will run riot. This troubles of my own making that arise from within myself. We're going to search out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. Interesting, the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. Being convinced that self, which manifests in many ways, was what a defeat is, we're going to consider the common manifestations of self, and then we're going to look at 3 inventories. How many of you have relapsed before? Raise your hands. Okay? Here's why. Resentment is the number one offender. Resentment destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From resentment stem all forms of spiritual disease. For I have been not only mentally and physically ill, and the big book's already talked about that, I have been spiritually sick. Now this next sentence is a great promise, and it's also a great warning. The promise is, when the spiritual malady is overcome, I will straighten out mentally and physically. The warning is, if the spiritual malady is not overcome, you will not straighten out mentally and physically, and you probably will drink again, and or just be miserable. Now you're going to get the instructions. You're going to put them on paper. You're going to make a list of people, institutions, and principles. Column 1, go back. Let the inventory flow out of you. You're going to get done with that, and you're going to take the first name in the list, and you're going to begin to write the second column. I love to write the second column. It's what those SOBs have done. You know, I love it. I let it go. I get graphic. You know, I use the kind of words that I would really use if I was being genuine and authentic. I don't say cute little things like, oh, he hurt my feelings. It's much more graphic than that. I use bullets. I also like to get very specific, you know. So I write all the second column on all those people. Big Book shows a couple different ways of doing it. One is, most of the time, we have anywhere from, if you got one name over here, we have 5 to 10 things that they've done that we're a little upset about. And so you can group them. I've done that before. Or you can write separately on each one, and I've done that before. Now, I stay very, very current because I believe my Big Book, and it has been my experience, resentment's the number one offender. So my deal right now is if in my evening review a name comes up 3 consecutive nights, I will write a 4-column inventory, do a 5th step, 6, 7, 8, and if amend is owed, I will make the amend. That's what I use as a barometer. Why? Because it's the number one offender. It will destroy me quicker than anything else. So why would I not do that? Right? So there's a couple different ways then that you can work with your second column. But be specific. Don't bullshit yourself. Write down the truth of what happens in there. So you get done with all these second columns. Now you're going to go with the third column. 3 words I work with: hurt, threatened, or interfered. If I'm mad at Bob in column 1 because in column 2 he stole my girlfriend, then I'm going to ask myself, how did that hurt, threaten, or interfere? And I'm going to look at 7 areas of self. Self-esteem, how I see and feel about myself. Pride, how others see me. Ambition, what do I want? Boy, I touched that one too. What do I want? I want him on his knees begging my forgiveness. You know, want respect, want just, you know, man, I touch that stuff. See? Security, what I need to be okay. A belief system, what I think I need to be okay, right? Personal relations, same sex. Sex relations. Belief systems about men and women. Money, I am my money. Okay? A lot of inventory written around money. So you think that your money defines you. I am my money. Got to get down with the third column. Page and a half of instructions that lead us into the fourth column. I want to mention a couple things about this. I'm on page 60. Big Book is, you get done writing the first 3 columns. Big Book says when you're done with those first 3 columns, you need to consider it carefully. First thing apparent was the world and its people, column 1, are often quite wrong, column 2. To conclude others were wrong, column 2, as far as I ever got. And then you bring that into the meetings I go to about what she did and he did. Follow me? You hear what the book just said? Use your outcome. These people continue to wrong me, column 2, and I stayed sore, column 3. Sometimes it's remorse, and then I'm mad at myself. But the more I fight and try and have my own way, the worse things got. It should be plain to me that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. Do you ever ask yourself the question why your resentments are futile? It's a great question. I'll do something I don't normally do. I'm going to give you an answer. Because you have no power or control over other people's behavior toward you. So it's futile. Deep resentments lead to futility and then unhappiness. To the precise extent that I permit these, that's an interesting word, permit. Book earlier told you resentment's the number one offender. Now it's using the word permit. You know why? Because they've showed you a tool to get rid of them. So that to the precise extent that I permit these resentments, do I squander the hours it could have been worthwhile. But with me, whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is grave. Matter of fact, we find it, resentments, fatal. For when I harbor such feelings, I'm going to shut myself off from the sunlight of the Spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns. I drink again. With me to drink is to die. Simplistic way to explain to you my experience with what I just read. If I am resentful at one person, God is everything and everywhere. God lies within the person. If I am resentful at one person, I'm cut off from God. And you multiply that times 10, and you multiply that times 15. That's what the book means when it says you're cut off from the sunlight of the Spirit, because God resides in that which you are resentful at. You have just cut yourself off from God. We aren't the kind of people who function very well, very long with that feeling of separation once again, and then we become diseased. And at some point, our mind, to give us some sense of ease and comfort, says, I know, Mark, what will give you ease and comfort is a drink. And at certain times, because of a phenomenon called a strange mental blank spot, and because of the pain that I have put myself in behind this resentment and being blocked from that which keeps me from being in this state, I say, you know what? I think that's a good idea. And I go take a drink. And I activate a phenomenon called craving. All behind a resentment that has me blocked from God because I'm playing God, being driven by self-will. And I'm unwilling to write the inventory to complete the inventory. See? If I'm to live, I got to be free of this anger. It doesn't say you won't be angry. I still get angry, I just don't get involved with it. There's a difference. Grouch and the brainstorm are not for us. They're the dubious luxury of normal people, but for a drunk, these things are poison. So I'm going to turn back to this list, the first three columns, for it holds the key to the future. By the way, that's another great topic to start talking about in your meetings that we never talk about. Let me read this sentence. I'm going to turn back to this list, for this list holds the key to my future. I think that's pretty important. The key to your future rests in this list. Why aren't we talking about this? Why aren't we? Think about what the book says. You follow me? You can't believe some of the book and not all the book, by the way. You can't. This isn't. Oh, what is it? Pick and choose, smorgasbord. Well, I think I'll do a resentment inventory, but leave off fear and sex, and I'll. Yeah, okay. This holds the key to the future. Key to the future. You don't think they meant the key to the future? Yeah, it means the key to your future. See, the rest of this process that you're going to get taken through. And now you're going to get some instructions. You're going to look at, there's that word it again. You're going to look at this whole thing from an entirely different angle. This ties into theater of the lie. You're going to begin to see the world and its people, column 1, really dominate you, column 2. Now pay attention. In that state, it's your third column. It's the state of being. The wrongdoing of others, column 2, fancy real, has the power to kill. Actually kill. Earlier on, the big book says your selfishness will kill you. You're going to see this afternoon when we do Theater of the Lie. You're going to see in the third column why you're fighting for your life. You're going to see why you get drunk. How do we escape? These resentments must be mastered. How do I do that? Can't wish them away more in alcohol, so this is going to be the course we're going to take. We're going to realize that people in column 1 who wronged us, column 2, were perhaps spiritually sick. Though I don't like their symptoms, second column, why you're angry, and the way they disturb me, third column, they, like me, are sick too. I call this the bridge to freedom. It begins with this concept. To understand that there are things that people have done, actions they've taken in the second column, that have had an impact on your life. It's introducing you to the idea that perhaps that happened because they were spiritually sick. Perhaps they don't understand there's nothing but oneness. Perhaps they're sound asleep, dreaming their wake. Perhaps they're like you, going through life being driven. And you're going to sit in judgment on them. You begin to understand something. They're spiritually sick, and then I'm sitting here judging a spiritually sick person, thinking they could have done something different. I love what the Four Agreements says. He says, don't take anything personal. And the reason you and I take things personal, and he says, I love it, he says, it's because of my selfishness. I thought, man, that guy's written inventory before. And he goes on to say that absolutely nothing any human being has ever done is because of you. Wow. What a concept. Your actions have nothing to do with me? I can't imagine that, because after all, I'm me. You follow? And it goes on to say, then I'm going to ask God, God, help me show these people I've written all this inventory on that I'm mad at the same tolerance, pity, and patience I'm cheerfully grant a sick friend. Are you going to you got a friend in a hospital bed dying of cancer. He calls you a name. He assassinates your character. You're going to get mad? No. He's probably not feeling very well, right? Dying of cancer. You're going to grant him tolerance, pity, and patience. That's what the book's trying to say. It's trying to shift you to look at things and understand people don't do this stuff intentionally. Your mothers and fathers, they weren't poor parents because they went to the counselor in high school and said, you have a program in which I can be a poor parent? I'd like to raise an alcoholic son or daughter. who's packed full of resentments? I want to make sure I never demonstrate love to him either. You get it? You start to go, oh my God, I've been carrying all this resentment like these people, you know. I'll throw out something here. There's no such thing as free will. Is it possible? As you sit here, you didn't choose your name, you didn't choose your gender, you didn't choose the state you're living in, you didn't choose any of that. You didn't choose a single belief system that was fostered on you from birth to age 10. Not a single one. You didn't choose it. Not one single thought that you had in your mind from probably birth to 10 did you have any say in, and all of that has determined the course of action and how you lived your life since then. And is it possible you're just operating on the delusion that you're making choices about things? What kind of people would make choices if that was true, like the ones we've made? Is it possible that I'm suffering from this delusion that me and all these other people are making choices? Is that a possibility? And in fact, they're not, and maybe that's what this concept of spiritually sick is all about. There's probably a lot to be said was you're getting people's best shot, including your own. Take a chill pill on yourself and take a chill pill on them. Sit with that a little bit. My experience is a computer can only put out predicated on the software. And if you want to get new information, my experience is you got to put in new software. That's what steps 4 through 9 do. They reprogram you. They give you new software. And lo and behold, new data starts coming out. Not because you chose to. See? New data starts coming out. Something to think about. This process, see? Changes your programming. Then a whole different set of circumstances and responses begins to manifest outside of you. So you get this prayer. Talks about take a kind and tolerant view. Then it talks about a fourth column. Then we're going to talk about a fear inventory. A lot of different ways you can write. I think it's wonderful to have fear squeezed between a resentment and a sex inventory. And we're going to talk about a fear inventory this afternoon. You'll see some of that in Theater Lie. Then you get a sex inventory where you're going to make another list. Going to answer a whole bunch of questions about this area. And you get done with that, you're going to do a fifth step. Then you're going to identify a whole bunch of defects as a result of reading that inventory. Then you're going to say a prayer in the 7th step, and then you're going to come out of that. Spend a period of time making your 8-step list, drawing it from your inventories, asking God to show you any other harm you put out into the universe. Keep adding that to the list, free of any judgment. Then you're going to make sure you're clear in the instructions for amends, and you're going to begin to start making amends. I had a person ask me about this who has some unfinished amends they're aware of. And she asked what I think was a great question, which was, what can I do? I said, would you really like to get those amends made? Are you willing to make them? She said, yeah, I believe I am now, after Joe scared me so much. I said, well, here's what you do. You find a couple people in the program that you're accountable to, and here's what you tell them. You go up to them and say, you know what? I think there's a level of consciousness that I want to experience. And I think the only way that this is going to happen is that I finish these amends. So from now till the day I die, every time you see me or talk to me in the telephone, after you say hello, your very next question to me is this: how many of those amends have you made? And I said, you give them consent to do that. 2 people. And every time, I mean every time, that is their second question out of their mouth after hello. How many have you made? And I said, that will help you get some power to make these amends. Use some spiritual brothers or sisters to move you through this process. See, you can use the ego. Trust me, at some point in time, she's going to get tired of that question. I don't care what motivates or moves someone through. You can use the ego. See, my ego is my friend. Here's why I say that. If it's not here, it's because I'm probably dead. So use it. See? So that's all I got for now on that.
Good stuff. Simple, but not easy. And if you think you got to muster up the power to do 4 through 9, you're missing something in 1, 2, and 3. You know how you've done step 3? You got a pen and a piece of paper out and you're making a list. I have a poem written by a friend of mine. It's called The Paradox of Our Age. We have bigger houses and smaller families, more conveniences but less time. We have degrees but less sense. We have more knowledge but less judgment, more experts but more problems, more medicine but less health. We've been all the way to the moon and back but have trouble crossing the street to meet a newcomer. We build more computers to hold more information to produce more copies than ever, but have less communication with each other. We've been long on quantity but short on quality. These are times of fast foods and slow digestion, tall men with short character, steep profits and shallow relationships. It is a time when there is much more in the window and nothing in the storeroom. This was written by the 14th Dalai Lama after a visit with President Bush. We're going to take a break in a couple minutes. We're going to come back and have questions and answers until lunchtime. We're going to take lunch from 12:30 to 2. We're going to do as much as we can this afternoon. You'll really enjoy Theater of the Lie. It's a lot of fun. But I wanted to talk about a couple things with the first 3 steps. You can go forward through the first 3 steps. You can go backwards through the first 3 steps. It's never a bad time during inventory. You need a little oomph. You start with the ABCs and ask yourself, with the paragraph above the ABCs, the description of the alcoholic, my first step, the chapter to the agnostic, my second step, and my personal adventures before the first drink and after the first drink. I never knew what before and after meant until I looked at what they'd said in the description of the alcoholic and the chapter to the agnostic. Drunk or sober, am I convinced that I am an alcoholic? A lot of people need to become convinced that they're alcoholic and that their life is unmanageable sober, just as much as they needed to be convinced that they were alcoholic and their life was unmanageable drunk. That's when I was stuck on the dash for the first time. That no human power... Oh, there's a trap there. I missed the trap. Went right over the trap word. That probably no human power can relieve my alcoholism. There's a good word to pause on. And ask yourself, are there any probablys? You got any probablys in your life that might be able to relieve your alcoholism? Look for the probablys. They'll take you to a new admission with the B. And see that God has and will. Never had a problem with can he. I've pretty much known he can. But he just wasn't going to do it for me. We got too many examples that God can. But the one that always gets me, whether it's in C or whether it's in the 6-step questions, is, will he? For me, as I am, with all this mud on my face from the first 3 steps that I've just seen, with all this current unmanageability, which is my current agnosticism, which is the areas where I'm running my life on self-will. That's what I really want you to see, because it's so easy to clearly see that the list of current unmanageability is connected to the list of current agnosticism. It's a reflection. They might even be the same words. And it's easy to see that the current agnosticism is connected to the current list of where you're running your life on self-will. But here's the trick. You got to take those lists as they grow and as they change and make sure they're still connected to a drink. Or you'll be stuck on the dash and you'll be doing the work because of the second half of step 1, and as soon as things straighten out emotionally or the circumstances in your life, you'll poop out. Because you'll be doing 1 through 9 based on the unmanageability, and the unmanageability won't have shit all to do with the first half of step 1 because you got stuck on the dash. So when you make that first list of current unmanageability, if you got to put something next to it, see that under the manifestation of the current unmanageability is a drink of alcohol or a drug or both. Get clear in the first half of step 1 whether you're powerless over where alcohol takes you. And isn't it amazing? They always call the drug that we have no choice over your drug of choice. Is it possible your drug of choice was your drug of no choice? I'll tell you what my drug of choice was. Yours. My drug of choice. Those would be the same people that think they have a choice whether to drink or use drugs again today. Because all they ever did was their drug of choice. Go up to some of those people that say their drug of choice and say, is it possible? That's the phrase in my home group when you hear, you just get a little leery, right? Is it possible that the drug you think was your drug of choice was actually your drug of no choice? Care enough to ask people that are dying. Ask yourself, do you care whether alcoholics and addicts continue to live and die? Do you care whether they die? Do you care whether you die? Do your amends have anything to do with drinking again? Does this current list of unmanageability have any connection to a drink? Do the areas where I'm running my life on self-will have anything to do with me taking a drink? And if they don't, if these lists, this list of current unmanageability, this list of current agnosticism, man came to our group one time in Santa Monica, great guy, you'd heard of him, big book stuff, does the 1 through 9 on a regular basis. Young girl in our group raised her hand. She said, could you tell us about the last time you went through the steps, the current unmanageability, the current agnosticism that you discovered? He said, current agnosticism? Not only do I not know what you're talking about, I was only agnostic once, and that's when I got here. How could there possibly be any current agnosticism? But you won't be able to see the current agnosticism if you don't get that list of current unmanageability. The manifestations of 52. Let me share an experience I had with the chapter to the agnostic that blew my mind. The first proposition in the second step is, do you now believe, or are you even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than yourself? A lot of people think the first consideration in the chapter to the agnostic, the first half of step 2 that we call it, is, do you now believe in a power greater than yourself? Like you take step 1, you get to the first half of step 2, and you're supposed to have some great belief in a power greater than yourself. It's not. It says, it could be right for the guy with 2 days. They were doing it back when. Do you now believe, or are you even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than yourself? If they have any kind of first step experience, they got to know there must be something or they're screwed. You're going to come to believe in God the first time through the work the same way you came to believe in booze and drugs. Let me say that again. You come to believe in God the same way you came to believe in booze. How'd you come to believe in booze? Did you ever get absolute faith in booze by watching somebody else get drunk? No. Did you ever have faith in booze by looking at it through the window of the liquor store? No. So how'd you come to believe in booze? And if you're like me, it became a power greater than yourself. Some new idiot says, I'm having trouble believing in a power greater than myself. My God, you've had a power greater than yourself in your life that you put before every single person and every single thing, including your own life. You've had experience with a power greater than yourself. So how'd you come to believe in booze? I saw that it worked in others. I made a decision. That wasn't enough because deciding to get drunk never got me drunk. I had to get up, put one foot in front of the other, take some action. Boom, 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 boom. I got some results. Then I had faith in booze. Same process in this book. You see that it works in others. You make a decision at step 3. You take some action in 4 through 9, which is the same as walking to the liquor store, and then you come to believe in booze. You come to believe in God the same way you came to believe in alcohol. So, I get to that first consideration in step 2. Do I now believe, and I have some time now, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself? That question will do nothing for anybody who's had some time or done some work. Of course you do. But if you add one little thing to that question, to that consideration, to that one short question they say we need to ask ourselves, it'll make it as relevant to you the second time as if it's your 50th time through the work. And here's how it goes. Based on what I've seen in step 1, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that this power that I say that I believe in can take me past where I am with every area I've seen on page 52, including freedom from alcohol, that I might not even know how it would feel? Past here. Past here. Because what you're facing in the second step and what you're going to face in the inventory, if you've been around for a while, is not what you do when you're powerless over alcohol with an unmanageable life. You're going to be facing what the fuck you do with power, with manageability, with the grace and glory of God in your life, and you're going to write about those times you thought you were so clear in 10, 11, and 12, wasn't nothing touching you. You give yourself to 1, 2, and 3 again, and it does its magic, and all of a sudden, gee, there ain't going to be much of an inventory. I've been in India for the last 3 years. Been studying with so-and-so and such and such. How big could the inventory be? Could I really owe that many amends? I'm a pretty spiritual guy. Set-aside prayer opens you up. 1, 2, and 3 does its magic. And every time I've started the work, my head says the set-aside prayer ain't going to work. Haven't I risen a little bit higher than the set-aside prayer? I know prayers in other languages. I know mantras. I know how to use a mala. I know this and that. The set-aside prayer is not going to work. There's not going to be much new in 1, 2, and 3 for me. This is my mind in March when I asked Mark to take me through, to help me. There's not going to be much of an inventory, and there certainly won't be very many amends. And isn't it great when you're surprised by not only the process, but you know how you know when God's in your life? When you're surprised by your life, too. If somebody would have told you where you were at a year ago, where you're at now, and it's pretty much the same, you got to ask yourself some basic questions. But if somebody would have told you where you were at 5 years ago, where you were going to be today, and it's an absolute surprise, because you know how you know when God's working in your life, when you feel lucky. You know how you feel when God's not working in your life? Unlucky. And you know how it feels to feel lucky? You're surprised. You're passionate. You're awake. You're feeling great about what's going on in your life. And then you hit a wall. And you've done some work. And you're wondering why. And you ain't talking about the amends that weren't finished. Or you have finished amends and you hit a new wall. It's like do some work, get a power, come to the new wall. It's just a new wall. Hello, new wall. Am I going to go around you? Am I going to just sit at the base of you? I'm going to stay on this side of it? Or am I going to ask God to take me through the new wall? And you'll see the new wall in the list of the current unmanageability. Of page 52, which will become your agnosticism. So, if you've been around and you get to that question, do you now believe, or are you even willing to believe that there is a power greater than yourself? And it's a stupid question because you know there is. Add to it, that can take me past here. Here. This stuff that I've located. The first step has located me. Here I am. Do I believe this power that I say I have so much faith in can take me past where I am? How are you going to work with that? Go through because the logical mind would say, now that you've answered that, or the way to answer that consideration would be to go home and see how much faith you got. Build that faith up. See how much you got. No, you're going to find that if you got the right question, the chapter will do this. And here's what you do with that first consideration about past here. Go through the chapter, mark every word or statement or question or anything that strikes you that would help you face where you don't believe. Doubt, skepticism, worship of things, people, sentiment, money, yourself, your mind. And even with a better motive, there's stuff that's holding you back. The sea, the sunset, a flower. The box that I put God into as my choice of being everything last time. Because the box gotten a little small. Because it was my conception of everything. What about coming to the next proposition, God is everything or nothing, without fear and with no size to the container? Because every time, for many, many times through this work, I chose God is everything, but I built the container that everything meant. Could God have had something to do with September 11th? Absolutely not. That's the devil. It's evil. Boom. September 11th started with September 11th. We had no responsibility. Our troubles were of their making. On and on and on. Could there be a bigger picture that God is either everything or He's nothing? Now, how am I going to approach that with stuff going on in the world? Maybe there's a bigger picture. Maybe there's such a thing as what goes around comes around. We all understand that from the streets. Anybody in New York knows what goes around comes around. Where I come from, they happen to call it karma. For every action, there's a reaction. Right? There ain't no guy up there with 1,000,000 tentacles, one attached to each of you, answering the phone, answering your prayers. I believe there's an energy in this universe that underlies the totality of things. From the book, Creative Intelligence of the Universe, underlying the totality of things that set up some specific laws. You live by the laws, you live well. You don't live by the laws, you don't live well. I haven't been hurt physically. I've never been punched. I've never been in jail. I've never been in a police car. And I've never been back to the penitentiary. And I've never been ripped off in 20 years. And before that, I was ripped off, punched, pistol whipped, in jail, in the penitentiary. And that didn't change because alcohol went out of my system. It changed because I got the power to start living from my heart the way I always wanted to. So you make the consideration. Past here, is there more? You face the doubt and the prejudice and the current agnosticism you have about it. You write that list out and you say, my God, it's the same stuff I wrote out as my list of the current unmanageability. Then how do you get from that to choosing everything or nothing? Go back through the chapter in another color and see the words or phrases or statements that are like more positive, that make you feel a little more comfortable, that take you from that. As soon as a man can say he's willing, he's well on his way. As soon as prejudice is laid aside, boom, the cornerstone. What statements or words, what things can I consider that would take me past my doubt? But you got to see the current agnosticism to get past it. How are you going to get past what you don't see? God don't take you past what you don't see. He's not that rude, and He doesn't come unless He's invited. First spiritual principle of AA. God ain't rude. He only comes when He's invited because of His love, not because of His choosiness. I'm not going to pick you. You're not calling me the right. If we had to call God the right name to get here when we were new, a lot of us would be in trouble. Because I called Him some names. No, you got to call Him the right name. No, you don't. Drop the name. Well, what's the name? That's my conception. That's my conscious contact. How are you going to take away my conscious contact? Face the doubt. How much did you believe when you got to the second step this time? This much. The book says, well, maybe this much is about money, people, things, sentiment, memory, fond memories, emotion. And you see, it locates you just as much as step 1 located you. Then you make your choice. Yes, I choose everything, and I'm going to drop my conception about the container. And I can do that from the ABCs. I can do it forwards, I can do it backwards. I'm having trouble with inventory. I go from the ABCs through the first, am I convinced? Through the first requirement, my life run on my will. Through the third step, decision. Reaffirm the decision. Boom, I'm back in inventory. I can do it forwards, I can do it backwards. How about those that want to go to lunch and stay and come back at 2 o'clock, feel free. Those that want to take a 10-minute break and ask any questions, let's say between 1, 2, and 3 steps. Come back, we'll answer questions until 12:30, and then we'll have lunch until 2. But let's keep the questions at 12 to steps 1, 2, and 3. This afternoon we'll talk about 4 through 9. Thanks. We're going to have more time over the weekend to entertain questions. We're spending the entire afternoon on 4 and 9. So I wanted to ask a question of the group before we ask for questions from you. With a raise of hands, and think about it for a moment, how many people in the room, their number one priority is to stay sober? Staying sober is your number one priority. How many? Isn't that interesting? There's no right answer, but let me raise a consideration. Isn't it interesting that if your number one priority is to stay sober, you've just made your number one priority the only thing you can't do? How many people in the room is their number one priority to seek that which is keeping them sober? It's very subtle, but it's very profound, because I'll tell you what, if this is a bottle of alcohol, and I'm putting all my effort into keeping myself from this bottle of alcohol, you know what I stay focused on? The problem. The problem. Alcohol. Keeping myself from drinking. And if this is God, but once I have a first step and I see there's nothing I can do without God to keep myself from drinking, then my number one priority is to seek that which is already keeping me sober. So, questions on 1, 2, and 3.
And these, let's see, I think it'd be nice if you come up and ask your question. I'd like to get the questions on tape.
They can ask and we can repeat.
Okay.
Go ahead, ma'am. Marco will respond to this. The question was, what's the difference between being driven and spiritually motivated?
I'll give you an assignment. First of all, look up the word driven so that you understand what the word means. Really, I don't know if there's any difference. Now, being driven by self-will, if you look up that word, what you're going to understand is there's no choice. My experience is no. Your head is already in the tiger's mouth, and you can't speed it up, and you can't slow it down. Go along for the ride. And does it really make any difference? Based on the results and the effect and knowing God. And
the only thing I would say is, as long as you're clear on who the driver is. Next, Danny.
My name is Danny. I'm an alcoholic. I was approached to go through the steps again. However, I'm in step 9, continuously following through with the amends, making appointments. And I'm struggling with the idea whether step 1, 2, and 3 again through the process will enhance where I'm at, or will it be bringing me back to a place to avoid where I am?
Danny asked that he was approached to go through the steps again, but he's in 9 and they're flowing. And would 1 through 8 take away from that movement or add to it? I would say, who approached you to go through the work again? I mean, why did somebody approach you to go through the steps again? Did you approach someone, or did someone approach you?
My sponsor, who was taking me through 9, to get to know me, he wanted to go back to me 1.
That's a little different. His sponsor suggested, since he's come from treatment, he comes from treatment in 9, he's getting to know a new sponsor here. His sponsor suggests to get that foundation, that connection together, to do 1 through 8. Let him get back into amends. My God, I don't know if it was me, and I would say if the power is there to continue making amends, you can review 1, 2, and 3 at any time to enhance that. If the power runs out to continue amends and they're not flowing, you'll be driven back to 1 through 8.
yeah, I would say the same thing. I would continue making amends, take it into prayer and meditation, and you can always review the first 3 steps. There may be some more inventory. You're going to be doing a lot of inventories over the years, but keep your focus on the 9th step. There was a question. Hi, Tracy.
This question, I never really said anything, but I got to ask this question. They talk about resentment the number 1 offender. I know we're not supposed to that. It kills more alcohol, and God makes that possible. How does God make that possible?
She said, resentment is the number 1 offender. It kills more alcoholics than anything else, including alcohol. God makes that possible. How does He make that possible?
The phrase "God makes that possible" is prior to the discussion about resentments. You got 2 separate issues here. Book says resentment's the number 1 offender. It kills more alcoholics than anything else. Is your question, how is it that God allows that? Is that what your question is? Behind the resentment? No, that sentence is behind this idea that you got to get rid of your selfishness. Inventory is the vehicle to get rid of that selfishness. They're in 2 different places in the book. You're putting God makes that possible behind resentments, kill more alcoholics than anything else.
God makes that possible is where it says, our troubles, we think, are basically our own making. They arise out of ourselves. And the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Above everything, alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must be rid of this selfishness or it kills us. God makes that possible. They're talking about selfishness. Resentment is the number 1 offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From resentment stems all form of spiritual disease. It's like Mark said, it's 2 different things. God makes it possible to get free of selfishness by removing it, by giving you the power to move past it, to live unselfishly. God makes it possible by removing the things that block you from more power to live unselfishly. Hi, Kel. She's in the work for the first time. She's only on one very first assignment, which is to read the first 164 pages. Is it possible for her to work on her resentments? She developed a resentment while working on step 1. Nobody can relate to that one. Well, you got a million other ones, darling, so stay focused on the assignment. Stay focused on 1, 2, and 3. The power will be there to move you through the resentment inventory. You can't work on your resentments. She was one of the people that raised her hand last night when we asked who still believes they have a choice whether they drink again or not. She has a problem with that because she still thinks she has a choice.
Let me read something to you on, there's two areas. It's on page 24. And they're talking to you and I about the state you're in now, which is you're sober. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, meaning we don't know, have lost the power of choice in drink. Sober. And now it's going to tell you why you've lost the power of choice in drink. Because our so-called willpower, which is, by the way, where choice comes from, becomes practically non-existent. We're unable, at certain times, to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. There isn't anywhere in this book where you can show me where it says I'm given the power of choice. Now, when you get to the 10th step, that's where you're told some very interesting things, but the power of choice being given back to you is not discussed. In there, it says that you have ceased fighting anything or anybody, even alcohol, that you've now been restored to sanity, that you've been placed in a position of neutrality, that it was a miracle, it was a gift, and that the problem has been removed.
Because in a fit spiritual condition, there's about as much choice to drink as there was to not drink in an unfit spiritual condition. So let me ask you this. Is there any choice once you put alcohol in your system over how much you're going to drink? When you stop drinking, is there any choice about how long you're going to be able to keep yourself stopped? Then where's the choice? She doesn't have one.
Yeah, but what's great is I think it's great that you're willing to challenge these belief systems. I read at the very beginning, a lot of what Joe and I are trying to do here is make you all begin to challenge some of these belief systems and start asking yourself, where are they coming from? And that's why I said to you, don't let anyone read your big book. Your belief system is not consistent with this big book at all. Does that make sense?
How long since your last drink? 16 months. Did you choose a God that would give you a choice to drink again? What's your will where alcohol is concerned? What's your will? To drink. What do you do? What do you decide in step 3? To turn your will over. A lot of people think the third step is turning their will and their life over to the care of God. If that was it, there'd only be 3 steps. The third step is not turning your will and your life over the care of God. 4 through 9 is turning your will and your life over the care of God. But if you've done that, if you've given your will and your life to God, where's the choice? My will is to drink. Have I taken the action necessary to turn my will and my life over based on the decision I made in step 3? Next. My name's Marty. I'm selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and afraid. Welcome. She's asking Mark to respond to his comment about don't let anybody read your big book for you. How do you work with somebody based on that principle you spoke of?
We answer some questions before we ever open the book that we've talked about. And then from there, we're going to open and we're going to start on the blank page and then move to the title page, and we're going to go through the book. And when the book gives us an instruction, we're going to do it. That's how I work with someone. Pardon me? It goes back and forth.
He meant don't do the work. Don't let anybody do the work for you.
But I meant more than that. And I meant also, the young lady shared, she had a belief system, she has the power of choice. That is not consistent with the book. It's not in the book. She has that belief system because she's letting someone else read her big book for her. This is life and death stuff. Don't let anyone read your big book. These people say, well, you can't make all your amends. It is not consistent with the book. Or I'm not going to do meditation. It's too fluffy. It's not consistent with the book.
He means like when people quote the book, they'll say, you know that part in the book where it says today you'll have a choice and you can work on your character defects? That's letting somebody else read your big book.
Or just don't drink and go to meetings. It's not
Where's
in
that?
the book.
You'll
See?
never recover. Where's that?
That's what I mean by that. So many people miss out on so much of what this program can offer because they let other people read the big book for them. And you know why we do that? It's an easier, softer way.
First thing my sponsor said to me about this 20 years ago was use it as a bullshit sifter. She asked, when you're new and you're hearing a lot of confusing things and you hear a slogan like I came to believe. How is that consistent to letting someone else interpret it for you? I think Mark would say the same thing. So would I. Where does it say that in here?
Yeah, and not only that, I did not come to AA. I was brought to AA by a power. Kicking, screaming. I did not come to AA. I did not come to. I was sound asleep dreaming. I was awake for at least 2 years. I got awakened through probably a series of events, and I came to have an experience. In other words, again, it's just cute little stuff that, I mean, if it works, that's wonderful. I've shared some stories with you. I bury a lot of people, So am I kind of a hardliner? If it's not in the book, it ain't. Yeah. I'm not interested in your program. I'm interested in the program. Follow me? I'm not interested in your sponsor's program. I'm interested in the program as outlined in the big book. Why? Because it's a deadly, fatal illness, and it kills every time. So, I'm in a position of neutrality with all that, but again, I just have my own experiences over the years, and if it ain't in there, it ain't. Then what I'm just getting is some opinion, and I understand it's an opinion. The tragedy is, though, there's a lot of people in AA that don't believe it's an opinion. They believe it's a fact. They believe it's out of the big book. So then they develop a belief system, and then somebody comes along who's got experience with the book, and they assassinate their character and call him a big book thumper.
Has anybody ever seen the arrogance of, I can't, he can, I think I'll let him? Oh, isn't that a nice thing? I think I'll let God. My God.
We're the only group, well, we're not the only group, but it's very prevalent in our group. We have the subject-objects confused. Who's God and who's the drunk? In the third step, you're going to make a decision to turn your will and life over to that which created your will and life. The subject-object, they're a little confused. You follow me? Oh, we're going to let God do all this stuff? Oh, isn't that sweet?
My spirit started to have a problem with the first line of the third step. God, I offer myself to Thee. Wow. That which created me, that which gives me each breath, each thought, each emotion, I'm going to offer myself to Thee. Gee, that's a nice thing for me to do, isn't it? How about this one? AA is a selfish program. I think it's one of the most selfless programs for some of the most selfish people in the world. It's a selfless program. Right?
See, this morning, Mike and Ken and I were, we were running, we were talking about this, and Mike had made a statement of something to the effect of, someone asked him, why do you keep going to those and these kind of things like this? And I said to Mike, that's because that person thinks that you're involved with some decision to come to a thing like this. I said, Mike, I love where I live. I love what I do. I like to run in this beautiful trail that I can run on, and instead I'm in a cramped, tiny little room at the Marriott, and running on a treadmill looking at traffic. And, I got 3 hours sleep last. I said, well, who in God's name would choose to come and do this? You understand the point I'm trying to make? It is a selfless program, see?
One of the third step considerations. Am I willing to live life on terms other than my own? Another consideration we didn't mention around playing God. Here's a great one. Given to me once. If you had something to do with your own creation, wouldn't you have done a little better job than God?
Any more questions?
Yeah, it seems like we strayed off the topic of the first three steps. I want to ask one question that kind of disturbed me. This is for Joe. Could you please elaborate on your comments about karma and September 11th?
He asked me to elaborate on my comment about karma and September 11th. I think for every action there's a reaction. And I think our country has taken some actions that brought a reaction. I don't think September 11th began September 11th. I think our troubles are of our own making. I think we've done some stuff in other countries. I'll give you a quote from the Dalai Lama. He said, and he's a very compassionate person, he said America needs to take the responsibility and admit that they were a part of bringing it on by not responding when it happened to others and doing it to others. I think what goes around comes around. I think there's a bigger design than we see. I think there's a wheel of life that explains to me why a baby, an innocent child, is born and dies 2 days later. There was something needed to be burned off, and that's all they had to do to go on to the next thing. 1 day, 2 days, do this, take a couple breaths, and boom, you're going to be in the next one. I think if there wasn't this wheel of life, this karmic law in effect, we wouldn't be here because the planet would have been full a long time ago. If all it was about God's love and you'll live forever and nothing will ever go wrong, paradise on earth. It's just not that way.
You want to talk about the power of resentment? Bin Laden, did it do him good to write some 4-column inventory? I mean this. I was talking to a pal of mine, and I realized 9/11 happened behind a resentment. It happened behind a resentment. Column 1, U.S. of A. Column 2, blah 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 blah. Third column. This is how they affect me. Wow.
I'll tell you something though, and it's not stuff that we should really be getting into, but I'll tell you, to think that the Muslim religion is filled with fanatics I'll tell you this. There's about as many religious fanatics in the Muslim religion as there is in the Christian religion. There's great Christians. There's wonderful Christians. We know some of the stuff going on in Christianity nowadays. Atrocious, unforgivable, sinful stuff. Probably forgivable by God. I'm not God. Some of the things they're debating now should not even be considered to be debated. If you did it, if I did it, there would be no debate. Here's one of the things I love. Some agency gets in trouble. They go to the court or whatever, the Supreme Court, and they say, now here's what we'll do. We'll make a thorough investigation of our agency, and we'll get back to you. Now imagine me going to court and saying to the judge, charged with whatever, let me tell you, Judge, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll make a thorough investigation, and I'll get back to you in a couple months. Right?
Questions on the first three steps? We got time for a couple more.
He's asking, when the book promises that we will recover from a hopeless state of mind and body, alcoholism, does it mean much more?
Well, in the beginning of the book, it shows the story of thousands of men who have recovered from alcoholism. And of course, in the full forward, the first edition shows us precisely how we recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body.
Right. I've recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body because I'm not craving booze and I'm not obsessed about it today. That's the hopeless state of mind and body. There's a lot that's going to go on after that. There's a lot of things to continue to grow in. But as far as alcoholism, a hopeless state of mind and body, the craving and the obsession, I'm in a recovered state. Do we reach some state of perfection? No. We're not saints. We're willing to grow along spiritual lines. Right? I wonder how many of us, though, ever work with that line. We claim spiritual progress. We always say, it's not about perfection. It's about progress. But how do you, in a humble way, claim spiritual progress? You share the miracles. You share the miracles in your life. You give hope to the new man. What hope could I give to somebody in this room that I met at the break that has 2 days if I said to you that I'm still powerless over alcohol and my life is unmanageable? Where would the hope be? That you'll always be recovering. That you're not going to have power in your life to make decisions along specific lines. You're not going to be able to have a manageable life. Something's not going to stay between you and alcohol. That you're not given the power to help others. That you're not given a willpower you can exercise along specific lines all that you wish. Where would the hope be? Because I want to remain irresponsible and say to you, hey, I'm powerless over alcohol and my life's unmanageable. What can you expect from me?
One more question.
She's asking what we mean when we define by the word spiritual consent.
Yeah, there's 2 spiritual laws I'll work with. One is the spiritual law of caring. I do not help alcoholics who show me through a course of action they don't care about themselves. However, if they show me through a course of action they're willing to take, they do, then I must be there with them, and I will be. Spiritual consent is this. It is where you have given me permission to come into your life, much like when it talks about in the chapter Working with Others, both you and the new man walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. But I only work with people who've given me spiritual consent. And by that I mean what they're saying to me is, I have just given you consent to say anything to me at any time about any form of my behavior. That's what I mean by spiritual consent.
And we can add to that principle he mentioned first, the principle of caring. The principle of caring goes like this, and many of you have seen it. If you don't care, I can't. You can try to convince yourself you do. You can try to believe you do. But if the new guy doesn't care, you can't. And if he does care, you can't not care.
Let's have some lunch.
2 o'clock.